The American Wild West has long been a canvas painted with tales of outlaws and lawmen, where legends are born and myths often intertwine with reality. Among the many figures etched into the annals of Western lore, Wyatt Earp stands as a formidable lawman, forever associated with the infamous gunfight at the OK Corral. However, it is a lesser-known episode that adds a layer of intrigue to Earp's storied legacy: the controversial encounter between Wyatt Earp and Curly Bill Brocius, a confrontation shrouded in mystery, ambiguity, and conflicting narratives. In the dusty pages of history, the question persists: how did Wyatt Earp, a man of law, become entangled in the demise of Curly Bill Brocius, a notorious outlaw of the Old West?
Join us on a journey through the turbulent landscapes of the 19th century frontier as we seek to understand the events that led to the purported murder of Curly Bill Brocius by the legendary Wyatt Earp. William Brocius, commonly known as Curly Bill Brocius, earned his place in Western folklore as a notorious American gunman, rustler, and outlaw cowboy, operating in the Cochise County region of the Arizona Territory during the late 1870s and early 1880s. The mystery surrounding his true identity persists, with conflicting accounts suggesting names such as William Brocius Graham, William Bresnahan, or William Graham. However, in outlaw lore, he was known as Curly Bill Brocius. Born around 1845, likely in Crawfordsville, Indiana, United States, Brocius's early life remains largely unverifiable. Little information exists about his past before arriving in Arizona, where he wandered after working as a cowhand in Texas and New Mexico. The origin of his distinctive nickname, allegedly bestowed by a Mexican cantina girl enamored with his dark, curly hair, remains disputed. Cochise County Deputy Sheriff Billy Breckenridge described him as being fully 6 feet tall, with black curly hair, freckled face, and well-built. Brocius left behind no letters, photographs, or details about his parents. His enigmatic persona was further underscored by the absence of any concrete information regarding his early life. Before rising to prominence as a leader within the notorious Cowboy gang in Cochise County, Curly Bill associated with the outlaw Bob Martin. During this time, he operated under the name Bresnahan and was only beginning to establish a reputation. In May 1878, Curly Bill resided in El Paso and El Paso del Norte, present-day Juarez, where he associated with a group of rowdies, including members of the John Kinney Jesse Evans gang. Both Martin and Curly Bill were suspected of participating in criminal activities with the Kinney Evans gang in New Mexico, marking a shadowy prelude to his infamous notoriety in the Wild West. On the afternoon of May 21st, a government wagon, accompanied by members of the 9th Cavalry, departed from El Paso en route to Mesilla. After covering just a few miles, Martin and Curly Bill overtook them on the road. Within seconds, 2 masked people appeared from the bushes, ordering the driver to stop before opening fire. This resulted in the fatal injury of one soldier and the severe wounding of another. Lieutenant Ben Butler quickly grabbed the rifle of a wounded comrade and returned fire. Martin and Curly Bill hastily retreated across the river into Mexico. Shortly thereafter, 4 Texas Rangers arrived on the scene, tracing the outlaws' path. The community, already on edge due to recent stage robberies, demanded justice. Despite Martin and Curly Bill's belief that they were secure in El Paso del Norte, Mexican police arrested them the next day, detaining them for extradition. Subsequently identified as members of the Kinney gang, the duo faced charges of robbery, murder, and attempted murder. Initially held in the military prison at Franklin, the El Paso County Sheriff assumed custody. Rather than incarcerate them locally, he transported them to Isleta, a town lacking a jail, confining them at the ranger headquarters. During the trial for robbery and attempted murder, Curly Bill, then using the alias Bresnahan, stood alongside Martin. 2.5 years later, in Tombstone, he adopted the name Brocius. His true identity remained an unsolved puzzle. Both Martin and Curly Bill received convictions and 5-year sentences. Meanwhile, Kinney and Jesse Evans had ventured north to participate in the Lincoln County War, so the two clumsy men did not join Kinney and Evans in the Lincoln County War. They made a single attempt to break free, swiftly getting apprehended. On the evening of November 2, 1878, they secretly broke in, escaped the chains, quickly dug a hole under the prison wall, and then escaped across the border to Mexico. Curly Bill and Martin successfully eluded capture, navigating through Mexico, New Mexico, and Arizona. By 1880, both had established residence in the San Simon Valley along the Arizona-New Mexico border, an area notorious for its abundance of desperados. Similar to many iconic Wild West figures, Curly Bill's reputation as a gunslinger was embellished. Nonetheless, leading a group of outlaws in Cochise County required a level of respect among the tough breed of criminals in the region. Newspapers referred to him as the Terror of Cochise County. One wrote, "His playful exhibition of his skill with a pistol never failed to delight those communities which the peripatetic William favored with his presence. He frequented Galeyville, a small community primarily occupied by desperados on the east side of the Chiricahua Mountains, earning the moniker of the Outlaw King of Galeyville. The township was essentially under the dominion of lawbreakers. Galeyville stood as a rugged settlement, harboring an excess of criminals and tough individuals. The town's coarse inhabitants and their crude sense of humor frequently escalated into violence, even within their own ranks. On one occasion, during the division of loot following a robbery, a fellow outlaw casually snatched Bill's hat as he rode by. Reacting swiftly, Bill rose to his feet, drew his pistol, aimed it at the offender, only to burst into laughter and discharge a few rounds into the sky. Throughout Arizona, Curly Bill gained a reputation as a spontaneous and carefree cowboy, always ready to unleash chaos at a moment's notice. Functioning as an outlaw cowboy and a rustler, Brocius held a peculiar role as a tax collector for Cochise County Sheriff Johnny Behan. His responsibility involved compelling fellow rustlers to pay taxes on their stolen cattle, contributing to the sheriff's coffers and supplementing his income. Descriptions of Brocius by contemporary author Billy Breckenridge in his book El Dorado, Bringing the Law to the Mesquite, painted him as the deadliest pistol shot among the cowboys, able to hit running jackrabbits, shoot out candle flames without breaking the candles or lantern holders, and shoot quarters from between the fingers of volunteers. In a drunken revelry on October 28, 1880, some of Curly Bill's associates discharged pistols into the air in a dim, vacant lot situated between Tough Nut and Allen Streets, close to the current location of the Birdcage Theater in Tombstone. During this chaotic episode, Tombstone's town marshal Fred White intervened, attempting to disarm Brocius by seizing his weapon's barrel. Unfortunately, the gun accidentally discharged, striking White in the groin. Wyatt Earp, borrowing Fred Dodge's pistol, swiftly intervened, using the weapon to strike Brocius in an attempt to subdue the situation. During the subsequent preliminary hearing for Brocius, Wyatt Earp testified that he had heard White declare, "I am an officer, give me your pistol." As White approached, Brocius removed his pistol from its holster, and White seized it by the barrel. He said he put his arms around Brocius from behind to see if he had any other weapons, and White gave a quick jerk, and the pistol went off. White immediately fell to the ground, injured. Wyatt promptly subdued Brocius and placed him under arrest. Brocius complained, "What have I done? I have not done anything to be arrested for." Initially, it appeared that White's injuries were not fatal, and he gave a statement the next day that absolved Curly Bill of murder. However, White's condition worsened that night. Brocius later claimed that his gun accidentally discharged and immediately regretted shooting White. He testified at trial that he did not consider himself to have committed a crime. Fearing a possible lynching due to White's popularity as the town marshal, Brocius waived his right to a preliminary hearing and expressed a strong desire to be moved out of town. Responding to this urgency, Pima County Deputy Sheriff Earp and George Collins promptly escorted Brocius to Tucson for his trial. White succumbed to his injuries 2 days after being shot by Curly Bill. Prior to his death, White testified that he believed the pistol had discharged accidentally and that he did not perceive Curly Bill's actions as intentional. Wyatt Earp, despite his later animosity toward Brocius and the Cowboy gang, corroborated this testimony. The demonstration that Brocius's pistol could be fired from a half-cocked mode, along with the discovery that the weapon had 6 rounds and fired only 1, further strengthens the random nature of the incident. After spending the majority of November and December 1880 in jail awaiting trial, Brocius received an acquittal with a verdict of accidental death. Wyatt Earp, sharing his perspective with biographer John H. Flood, Jr. many years later, revealed that he believed Brocius was still armed at the time and only noticed the pistol on the ground in the dark after Brocius was already down. Despite being involved in the deaths of many men during his lifetime, Brocius clearly liked White and insisted his death was an accident. Following his release from jail, Bill embarked on a rampage, causing havoc in the towns of Charleston, Contention City, and Watervale along the San Pedro River. On January 8, 1881, shortly after being acquitted of the murder charge, Bill, accompanied by another cowboy, intruded upon a Mexican fandango. Employing intimidation tactics, they blocked entrances, brandished pistols, and demanded that everyone strip naked. Afterward, they instructed the band to play music and forced the dancers to perform for their amusement. The subsequent day, the 2 cowboys entered a church in Contention, disrupting the sermon by warning the reverend to cease preaching or risk injury. In a chilling display, they took turns shooting close to his head and then aimed their pistols at his feet, coercing the clergyman into an involuntary dance. Wells Fargo agent Fred Dodge recounted both incidents in his memoirs, and both were mentioned in local newspapers. The boys then headed for Tombstone, where they got good and drunk, then rode down Allen Street shooting holes in the sky. 9 days later, they entered Contention City, promptly stole $50 and shot a civilian. After a day of spreading fear among the locals, they continued their escapade to the nearby Watervale. From there, Bill openly challenged authorities, daring them to apprehend him. Bill's outrageous antics garnered national attention, elevating him to the status of the most renowned outlaw in the wild and unruly Arizona. In Silver City, Bill set fire to a saloon after shooting out a lamp, causing it to explode. On another occasion, he shot a hole through a freighter's hat simply for his own amusement. A reporter who penned a story displeasing to the gunman also fell victim to Bill's trigger-happy tendencies as he shot a hole through the reporter's hat. In Galeyville, Bill showcased his marksmanship by shooting a tin cup out of a saloon keeper's hand, inadvertently piercing through a wooden wall and fatally injuring a bystander's horse. During a visit to a Galeyville restaurant, Bill ordered a meal, placed a 6-shooter on each side of his plate, and commanded everyone to wait until he finished eating before leaving. After concluding his meal, Bill laid his head down and fell asleep, inducing a state of paralysis among the patrons. Upon waking, he paid for everyone's meal and departed. The so-called outlaw leader then assisted Deputy Breckenridge in collecting taxes, leading him into the cattle thieves' lair. At Fort Bowie, Bill engaged in a risky demonstration, challenging a soldier to hold up a coin between his fingers while Bill attempted to shoot it down. In an unfortunate turn of events, Bill's second shot resulted in the accidental severing of the soldier's thumb. Bill nonchalantly responded, "Looks like I've just gotten you a discharge from the Army." On May 25, 1881, Brocius was drinking heavily in Galeyville with his friend and Lincoln County War veteran Jim Wallace and 8 other cowboys. Trouble ensued when Wallace insulted Brocius's friend and ally, Tombstone Deputy Marshal Billy Breckinridge. Despite Breckinridge's attempts to ignore the provocation, Brocius took offense and demanded that Wallace accompany him to apologize. Brocius threatened to kill him. Wallace complied, but Brocius afterward heaped abuse on Wallace, announcing, "You damned Lincoln County son of a bitch! I'll kill you anyhow." As Curly Bill stepped out of the saloon, Wallace, seizing the opportunity, ambushed him from behind. The bullet struck Curly Bill in the cheek, went through and came out the other side of his mouth, taking some teeth. Initially, it appeared that the outlaw king might succumb to the injury, prompting his friends to plan retribution against Wallace. However, Brocius demonstrated a robust constitution and survived, albeit with an awkward bandage wrapped around his head for the following weeks. Deputy Breckinridge arrested Wallace, but the court eventually ruled that he had acted in self-defense. In a separate incident, a well-known San Simon cowboy named Dick Lloyd, renowned for his bronc riding skills, chose an ill-fated night to showcase his abilities in the small burg of Maxey. Riding his horse into a local saloon where Johnny Ringo, Curly Bill, and their companions were engaged in a poker game, Lloyd's disruptive entrance displeased the group. In response, they swiftly drew their pistols, shot him, and calmly resumed their poker game. As they left, they nonchalantly tossed a portion of their poker winnings onto Lloyd's body to contribute to his funeral expenses. In July 1881, an incident unfolded when Bill Leonard and Harry Head attempted to rob the general store of William and Isaac Hazlitt in Hachita, New Mexico. The Hazlitt brothers shot Leonard and Head during their captivity. Some modern researchers state that Brocius and friend Johnny Ringo rode to New Mexico to avenge their friends' deaths. However, no eyewitnesses could be located to corroborate these events or to establish Curly Bill's direct involvement in the Hazlitt's demise. 4 months after Brocius was shot, on October 6, 1881, George Parsons, as part of an Indian scouting party, rode through the McClory Brothers Ranch in Sulphur Springs Valley. He noted that Brocius had not completely recuperated from his injury, but was well enough to ride. For this reason, many historians suspect that Brocius was involved in the Hazlitt's deaths. In July, some reports say that Brocius ambushed a Mexican trail herd in the Skeleton Canyon Massacre. In this grim event, 6 vaqueros lost their lives, while the surviving members were taken captive, possibly subjected to torture, and ultimately met their demise. Allegedly, Curly Bill proceeded to sell the pilfered Mexican beef to Newman Haynes Clanton in the subsequent month. Tragically, when Old Man Clanton and 4 others were herding the stolen beef along the trail to Tombstone, they fell victim to an ambush in what is now referred to as the Guadalupe Canyon Massacre, resulting in their deaths at the hands of Mexican assailants. However, no credible reports have confirmed Curly Bill's direct involvement in these incidents. Brocius was still recovering from being shot in the face by Wallace only 6 weeks earlier. Some modern researchers doubt that he was well enough to take part in these events. Assassination of Morgan Earp. During the months following the street fight in Tombstone, the Cowboys, after the Spicer hearings cleared the Earps of murder, resorted to ambushing their enemies. On the evening of December 28, 1881, Virgil Earp was shot from ambush while patrolling the streets of Tombstone. Then, A few weeks later, on March 18, 1882, Morgan Earp was gunned down by an assassin. Brocius was implicated by Marietta Duarte, the wife of Pete Spence, as a participant in the assassination of Morgan Earp. However, Justice of the Peace Wells Spicer rejected her testimony on the grounds of it being hearsay and because she could not testify against her husband. Lacking concrete evidence, the prosecution dropped all charges against the Cowboys. Brocius then robbed the Tombstone Bisbee stagecoach on January 6, 1882, and the Tombstone Benson stage the next day. In response, Deputy U.S. Marshal Wyatt Earp organized a posse to pursue the culprits, but their search in the Chiricahua Mountains proved fruitless. Brocius reappeared in Tombstone on March 17th. On March 20th, 1882, Deputy U.S. Marshal Wyatt Earp shot outlaw cowboy Frank Stillwell in Tucson while guarding his brother Virgil, who was en route to California. Mysterious death at Iron Springs. On March 24, 1882, the Earp party was expecting to meet Charlie Smith at Iron Springs, later Mescal Springs, in the Whetstone Mountains. Smith was bringing cash from Tombstone about 20 miles to the east to help pay posse expenses. As they surmounted the edge of a wash near the springs, they stumbled upon Brocius, Pony Deal, Johnny Barnes, Frank Patterson, Milt Hicks, Bill Johnson, Ed Lyle, and Johnny Lyle, cooking a meal alongside the spring. As per Wyatt Earp's account, and an anonymous report submitted to the Tombstone Epitaph, he led the posse as they stumbled upon the Cowboys' camp at the springs from less than 30 feet behind an embankment. The Cowboys initiated gunfire just as Earp dismounted. Initially, they believed they had hit Earp, but it turned out they struck his saddle horn instead. Texas Jack Vermillion, whose horse fell victim to the gunfire, remained composed under the barrage and closely shadowed Wyatt during the ensuing firefight. Doc, Johnson, and McMaster returned fire and sought refuge. Warren Earp was away on an errand at the time. 18 months prior, Wyatt Earp had protected Brocius against a mob ready to lynch him for killing Town Marshal Fred White. Furthermore, he provided testimony that played a pivotal role in sparing Brocius from a murder conviction. Now, Brocius aimed his shotgun at Earp from approximately 50 feet, but missed. In retaliation, Earp returned fire over his horse using a 22-inch, 10-gauge shotgun, fatally striking Brocius in the stomach with a blast of buckshot that nearly severed him in two. Brocius collapsed at the water's edge by the spring. The Cowboys launched a series of shots at Earp's group, but the lawmen's fire was so intense that the Cowboys were able to leave. Bullets punctured both sides of Earp's long coat, with one striking his boot heel and another grazing his saddle horn, scorching the saddle hide and narrowly missing Wyatt. Engaging his pistol, Earp shot Johnny Barnes in the chest and Milt Hicks in the arm. Vermillion tried to retrieve his rifle wedged in the scabbard under his fallen horse, exposing himself to the Cowboys' gunfire. Doc Holliday helped him gain cover. Wyatt Earp had trouble remounting his horse due to a cartridge belt that had slipped down his legs. He was finally able to get on his horse and retreat. McMaster was grazed by a bullet that cut through the straps of his field glasses. Earp biographer John Flood wrote that the Cowboys entered Brocius's remains on Frank Patterson's nearby ranch, located along the Babacomari River. This is close to the original McClory Ranch site about 5 miles west of Fairbank, before the McClorys moved to the Sulphur Springs Valley in late 1880. Brocius's gravesite has never been identified. Proof of death. Fred J. Dodge, an undercover agent employed by Wells Fargo in Tombstone, conducted inquiries into Curly Bill's demise. In his account, he mentioned conversing with J.B. Ayers, a saloon proprietor in Charleston, a locale frequented by the outlaws and rustlers. Ayers relayed that individuals present during the encounter had informed him that Curly Bill met his end at the hands of Wyatt Earp. They purportedly removed Brocius's lifeless body that very night, laying him to rest on Patterson's ranch along the Baba Kamari. The Tombstone Nugget first put up a $1,000 reward for proof Curly Bill lived, and the Tombstone epitaph countered with a $2,000 reward. Neither was ever collected. Surely Curly Bill himself couldn't have resisted an offer like that. Bill's friends denied their leader died at the hands of Wyatt Earp. It's worth noting that Brocius was not a wanted man in the eyes of Arizona law enforcement, and if he was not dead, had no reason to disappear. Furthermore, returning to Texas, where, according to Wyatt Earp's recollection, he may still have faced murder charges, seemed highly improbable. Other names. Because of his nickname, Curly Bill, Brocius has been confused with Curly Bill Graham, a different outlaw of the same geographical region and time period. Graham was killed in a gunfight by Deputy Sheriff James D. Houck on October 17, 1887, and buried in Young, Arizona, and is not considered by historians to be the same Curly Bill of Charleston and Tombstone. Brocius' birth date, birth name, and birthplace are not known. In newspapers of the time, Brocius was known alternately as Curly Bill and Curly Bill. His surname has also been spelled as Brocius, although the former is the spelling used for his mail drop in Arizona Territory, according to one published letter of the time. Origins in Missouri. Historical research into Brocius's death turned up two possible earlier identities. Dennis McLaughlin in the Encyclopedia of the Old West reports that Brocius was from Missouri and named William B. Graham. He said Brocius rode for various Texas cow outfits and was known in Kansas. According to historian Robert M. Utley, Robert Martin was a member of the Jesse Evans gang of outlaws in New Mexico during the mid to late 1870s. Billy the Kid briefly joined this group before going to work for John Tunstall. Evans's gang, a loose-knit consortium of desperados known as the Boys, ended up fighting against the Regulators during the Lincoln County War. Because of the time frame, the location, and his friendship with Martin, Curly Bill Brocius may have been a member of the Evans gang as well. In conclusion, the details surrounding the alleged murder of Curly Bill Brocius by Wyatt Earp remain shrouded in the enigmatic haze of Wild West history. While some accounts suggest a violent encounter between the two legendary figures, others argue that the narrative is more nuanced. The legacy of Wyatt Earp and Curly Bill Brocius, intertwined in the tapestry of the frontier, reminds us that the past, like the vast expanses of the untamed West, is riddled with mystery and intrigue, leaving room for speculation and endless exploration.
Please like and share if you find the video content interesting and useful. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment below so as not to miss the upcoming interesting videos. Thanks for watching.